So Sravanthi and I met a while ago, and she is the CEO and founder of an AI company, Gen Z it's called. And we are working together, and I already learned a lot from her. So I will leave it with that. So, Sravanthi, can you introduce yourself maybe a bit more?
Hey Casper and hey Molly. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sravanthi, founder and CEO of Gen Z Technologies. We are into generative AI solutions, uh, building enterprise knowledge search for enterprises, kind of a private GPT, which ensures data privacy. Uh, that's the company, but I come from enterprise application background plus data science background. I have a master's in AI. Pursuing my PhD in AI with IIT Hyderabad, one of the premier research organizations in India. That's a combination of enterprise application development plus data science plus AI plus generative AI is what I would put myself as with respect to the technology space. Uh, Other than that, I'm a mother of two kids, and I'm also a wife, daughter, sister, along with my career goals, right? Yeah, and pretty passionate about technology, pretty passionate about solving problems for people, making impact in regular lives.
Okay, thank you. Well, that introduction makes it clear why you're the right person to ask all the dumb questions that I have. So let's start with the first one. And basically, the thing is, can you provide a simple explanation of what AI is and how it works?
So AI, it all started with can we mimic human intelligence, right? The name itself says artificial intelligence. So the thing that sets apart humans with respect to all other species is intelligence. And that's where when the science was being explored, science was emerging. Uh, People started to explore intelligence as well, reasoning, logic, memory. There are many aspects of it, and somewhere the term is coming from there, and it all started in 1950s with respect to machine intelligence. Can machines think like humans? Can machines reason like humans? So we built logic using programming languages where we say do this, do this, do this, step one, step two, step three, basically predefined way of thinking to a computer, right? But then can a computer think by itself? Can a computer reason by itself? That's the intriguing thought, I would say, where this field started as. It started with data data science, right? So how do we represent data? It started with bits, zeros and ones, binary. But then once we have the binary information, what do we do with it? How do we, I mean, we know zeros and ones, we know characters, alphabets, numbers are represented, the pixels are represented in the digital world, the images are represented. So images again, comes from the human vision. The documents come from the the paper documents. So when we started representing data in terms of digital binaries and bits and this thing, uh, so we started programming, we started uh, basically whatever human tasks or manual tasks that we have been doing in our daily lives, we started to automate that. But then from there, okay, what is the next step? We have kind of automated our manual processes. What do we do next? How can I think like a human? What should be my next process flow? Uh, right. So that's where it all started. So the data science or decision science started, just representing. Am I audible?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Uh, data science is one. Then slowly started machine learning. Uh, and Machine learning is more about statistics. Okay, now I have huge amounts of data, a lot of numbers are there. Uh, I know these insights from this data, so I can make out these are the forecasts, like how my sales happened over last few months for last 1 year. What were my sales in January, February, March, and all. So I see trends over years, over months, over days, which is kind of statistics and data science. Now I see the trends. What do I do about trends? How do I make use of these trends or insights that I'm getting out of the previous data? Right? Then came the forecasting part of it. Forecasting is where the machine learning kind of field emerged, saying, okay, now I have my previous trends. What can I predict out of it? What can I prescribe out of it? If my sales are like this, and I see, say, my sales are going up in Thanksgiving season, can I predict for next year also there will be a increase in sales along the holiday season? Is it just Thanksgiving or is it any other holiday as well?
Can I
Uh,
ask a question on that? Because
sure.
that prediction that you make based on data, because it's called artificial intelligence, but is it really intelligence, or is it just because sometimes you also read it's just using patterns, recognition of patterns and a lot of data, and just guessing based on that what the next word should be. So that doesn't sound intelligent, but the predictions that come out of it look intelligent. So is it intelligence according to you, or is it something else?
It's not intelligence, I would say. It's just basically identifying patterns across your previous data, and based on those patterns, you are predicting something else in the future. I mean, do you call that intelligent? To some extent, probably yes, because you are able to make some predictions. But are those predictions reliable enough, reasonable enough to human logic?
Correct.
Can is machine by itself able to do it uh, without that past data, right? Humans probably we see some trends and we can make predictions without looking at all these data. Also, we can still make predictions.
Correct. Yeah.
But to a computer, the data is important to be able to predict.
But
And just a small set of data is not sufficient for a human, say probably, or for a kid. If I say here is a cat, I show a kid two or three times a cat, and anywhere in the world, any place he goes, any kind of cat, the kid recognizes it. But to a machine, I'll have to show thousands of such cats
before it's able
in
to
different
recognize.
settings
Okay.
for it to be able to recognize.
So
So, do I call that intelligence? Probably to some extent,
it sounds
but
more like an
inside the human
educated
learning.
guess. Okay. And just next question for me would be, can you give us just examples, because AI is not new. You already mentioned it. It started in the 50s or maybe even before that. So can you just give examples of everyday things where we use AI, maybe without us actually being aware of that?
Sure. So, I mean, I think the OTT platforms like Netflix, the music platforms like Spotify, we have them every day today, right? So, the kind of recommendations, the movie recommendations or the web series recommendations that you get is kind of AI without you knowing it. It's called a concept called recommender systems. The shopping experience that we have, if you go to Amazon, order something, you get product recommendations along with probably a laptop. If you buy a laptop, you get recommendations of a laptop skin, what do you say, a mouse, a keypad, an adapter, the accessories of the laptop. So, where does all this come from? Again, recommendation system. And similarly, the weather forecast that we get on weather.com, right? It's a forecasting that is coming in. So again, it's a real time example. The Android phone that you have the keyboard, it suggests the next word that you need to use or that can come in the you're typing something. What could be my next word? There are suggestions coming in on your keyboard, Android keyboard, on your mobile. It's also what do you say a recommendation system there. So there are many systems like forecasting, recommendation, decision support, which we use in our daily lives in our regular applications. We are so used to it that we don't even realize that it is AI. But yeah, these are some examples of AI that I would say we are unknowingly using them on a daily basis and kind of habituated to them as well, right? It's no, I mean we don't even realize that we are being influenced now. The social media trends or friend suggestions,
Correct.
all of this, we are so used to it right now. Uh, Now I think we got habituated to it.
Okay. Yeah, because of course AI is there already for a long time, but it sort of came top of mind because of ChatGPT. And I think
Right.
I heard somebody refer to it as the Netscape moment of AI. And I'm old enough to I was raised without the internet. So I remember indeed when Netscape came, of course, the internet was already there for 20 or 30 years, but it wasn't accessible for non-technical people. And then
Mm,
Netscape came, and suddenly you had an interface where you could interact with, you could browse. And before that, you couldn't. And it was mainly text and some images, but it was like something I could do that. So suddenly
mm,
I had internet available. And I think ChatGPT did the same for AI. It was already there for a long time, but it was really hard for just ordinary people like me to sort of grasp it and work with it. And now with ChatGPT, you can just talk to it. So
right.
suddenly it is there. So, and ChatGPT, if you read about it, it's referred to as a large language model. Can you
Mm.
explain what that is and how that relates to AI?
Like, uh, so as I said, we spoke about the machine learning part of it, right? So it started with data science and then machine learning, and then came neural networks. Neural networks again is kind of it's called artificial neural networks, kind of an attempt to mimic the human brain. Human brain is made of lots, millions of neurons, and various connections across neurons, and there are different parts of the brain which are responsible for certain functions of the human body. Right? So similar way, people try to mimic a neuron, saying there's an input, there's a processing unit, and there's an output coming of it. This output is fed to a second another neuron. The way the human brain connections work. Uh, so that was there in the research area, I think, since 1990s to 2010. And as the compute kept increasing, right, along with the AI technology emerging, there was also a compute limitation earlier in 90s. And slowly the compute increased, the RAM increased. We could have smaller chips, smaller GPUs having high processing power fitting into a laptop, into a mobile. That's where I think the deep learning came into picture in early 2010s, uh, where now I'm not working on one layer of neurons or couple of neurons. Rather, human brain has millions of neurons. Can I mimic that as well? Can I mimic that scale? That's where the deep learning field emerged. There were breakthroughs with respect to image processing, where the cat was being identified by a computer, a dog is being identified by a computer, right? So the next set of scale of deep learning is where the large language models come from. So
And by
deep
the way,
learning
just
was,
to interrupt you, so I remember we had something from IBM called Deep Blue, which was a chess computer that actually beat the world champion. So is that an
right,
example of that deep learning?
yeah.
Ah,
So
okay.
a specific deep learning is a specific model. I would say the image models, the language models, the speech models. These are all NLP models. These are all based on deep learning. Whatever we have today. There are various architectures of deep learning, but then the underlying theme or concept is mimicking human brain, trying to mimic the human brain.
Okay.
Uh,
With all those neurons that we're
yeah.
mimicking. Okay, that's
Now,
clear.
now large language models took it to another level, where now instead of having deep learning was say hundreds of layers of neurons, now large language models is probably 100 times that scale now, or 1,000 times that scale now. So the compute that you really need for an LLM to train an LLM today is really crazy, right? OpenAI is probably trained on thousands of 800 GPUs for so many hundreds of hours, or thousands of hours. So that's the compute the large language model needs. It has like billions of parameters. The GPT-4 model that we have now today, right? It's trained on trillions of tokens for so many hundreds of hours on thousands of GPUs. That's the kind of scale that large language models have today with respect to training the models, or even inferring also, right? Inferring is, okay, I have a model now which understands my data. uh, what can I give some input to it now? Can it give me an output relevant to that? So that is called inference part. The training part is where you're teaching your architecture, whatever that LLM architecture is, to learn from the data, right? So there's a complete paradigm shift with respect to the software world that we saw earlier to the AI world that we are seeing today. So in the software world, we used to say do step one, step two, step three, basically until step n steps, saying this is going to be my data. Given this data, you do validate, you process, you give an output, you render on the UI. Where these are all steps processed in a sequential manner, and you get a specific deterministic output. In the AI world, what we are saying is, I give you my data, I give you my output, what is the expectation, you build the model, you build the logic. So the architecture, the steps, what is a black box basically right now.
Yeah.
We don't know what goes in. I mean, we know what goes in, we know what to expect out of it, but how it is processed is a black box today.
Okay, I think I understand that. So that sort of explains why it's a larger model. So it's like basically a huge brain that they sort of mimicked and that's created, and it's the difference is it's growing and growing the amount of neurons. But so how does that language fit in? Because you can now just speak a natural language to ChatGPT or any other open on any other AI engine, but it can also talk back, and I can speak Dutch to it or English, and it will give me an answer. So how does that work?
So basically, with so many neurons and so much of again, as I said, right, it is fed so much of internet data that is available on the internet today that these large language models are able to understand the grammar of the sentence, right? So it knows what a subject is, predicate is, and how to form a sentence, and what grammar, and basically it's all predicting the next word. So when you are the way we see this seasonal trends, right? You're given a multi-year, say 10 years of data, the model is able to predict the next year forecast.
Yes.
Similarly, for language, each word is represented in a number, and with so many words and vocabulary in any language that we have, uh, this is all fed into a, what do you say, a million or billion parameter model, so many neurons. And I say, okay, this is my data, learn from it and try to predict the next word. So, large language model, if you look at the inference part of it, it is just trying to predict the next word based on the probability of the data that I have seen earlier,
Okay.
right? So, that's the generation part of it. What could be likely my next word going to be, highly probable next word going to be, given a certain context.
So, but if you then sort of break it down to that instead of well, we talked about intelligence or whatever, but it sounds more like because of the huge amount of data, it's just using very smart statistics and data analytics to indeed predict the next word, because that's sort of
Right.
what it boils down to.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Clear.
But the kind of patterns that we see probably is what it has learned, right?
Correct.
What word comes in a given context? What is a highly probable word that is coming in the given context is what it has learned from again a vast amount of data. But then for each language, there's a set of for each context, there's a set of words. For each language, there's a set of words.
Correct.
Uh, but that's yeah, underlying it, it's all probability.
But that's interesting. So you train a large language model by feeding it data, and we all know from ChatGPT, sort of they fed it like first a whole library of books, and then it sort of starts getting the internet completely into it, and it means you train it on existing data, and with that, it's better at predicting the next word, basically. If you look at that, does it mean that if I ask a question to something like ChatGPT or any other AI tool, that it will only reflect what it found? So the question is, can it create something new, or is it just replicating what it found and it gives me the most likely answer? So, for example, can you do innovation with AI, or is it just replication of what is already there?
So I would say innovation. I mean, you can use AI. Again, it has to be human intelligence using AI as a tool to come up with some innovative concept or completely radical uh, uh, new thing, right? But by itself, AI is able to create movies, scripts, songs, pictures, images, art form, and all. But if you look at it probably is taking from previous content. So all of this, if I categorize as content, various forms of content, it learned from previous content and then it is able to generate some new content to some extent. Uh, it is helping in drug discovery, new drugs coming out of using AI models, new proteins coming out of using AI models, right? New molecules coming out, new chemicals coming out. So there's a lot of things that are coming out, but again, it is up to us to validate, test, try, whatever the process was earlier. I think that doesn't go away. Your testing still has to be done. Your human trials, if it is medical healthcare, right? The human trials have to still go on. It gives us new things. It creates new innovation, but then that has to be tested and tried out. Can it come up with a new technology called blockchain, another cryptocurrency? I really doubt.
Mhm.
But can it come up with new proteins, new molecules, new chemical compounds? It definitely can give a set of things which has to be tested and tried out by humans again.
Okay, because that touches on two interesting topics, and part of that is like more ethical, which we will cover tomorrow with Haley, but there's also a technical side on it. So it is about forcing and copyright. So I read this morning in the paper that artists lost a law case against an AI firm because they were saying that it was using their copyright because their images are in there, and they actually lost the case because they were not able to prove that their images are actually in the database. So it's not the fact that it is using data and images, but they were not able to prove that it was theirs. So that's really interesting because there are two things there. So one is indeed you don't know the source with most AI models, so it's unclear what the source is. So there's no reference there, so you don't know what it's based on. And the second thing is because you don't have the source, it's also you are not aware if there's a copyright infringement there. So how do you look at that? How does that work? Is that just like indeed that black box you were talking about, and we need to live with that?
I think this is the things are unfolding as we speak. There are new things coming in. So this case is lost today in one court, but there's always a chance that it can be again taken to the next higher court, where things may change, right? So legal battles, how they turn out, I'm really watching the space and interesting and curious to see how things turn out here. But ethically, if I look at it, right? So it was someone's creation, uh, and it probably took them a really very long to come there to produce that piece of art or content, right? It really takes years of learning to be there to produce that content. And if AI is taking that and then creating within minutes and seconds, as a human, I would definitely be uh, uh, either want to monetize that my so much of years of hard work, or I need to be credited with something, right? So this is used. So be transparent about what was used in the model, what kind of data was used in the training of the model. I think that transparency will uh, probably take these legal battles down a bit. Uh, I think crediting the right person with the right content is definitely as humans, that is a very basic need, I would say, that as humans we have with respect to recognition and uh, credit worthiness, right? So
Yeah.
as one of the person who is in the technology space, I definitely want me to be recognized for my piece of work. So copyright infringement, ethically, I wouldn't uh, support that. I think transparency of what data is being used helps alleviate that to an extent.
And that is really interesting because that sort of touches on the topic of generic versus specific. So
Mhm.
ChatGPT, of course, uses generic information from the web, from books, and you don't know where.
Right.
And that sort of gives a problem. So you don't know if it is hallucinating, if it gives an answer, you don't know if it's right, you don't know where it comes from. but you can use the same technology to upload, and it's already possible now. Also, even with ChatGPT and other tools as well, so you can upload your own information and start asking questions on that. So if you look at corporate learning, that is probably something which is more interesting. So the technology with your own specific data, so you feed it the right data, then the copyright thing goes away, and also the information becomes much more worthwhile. Do you think that if you look at the usage of AI, that those kind of applications will be also coming up and maybe even more important than a generic thing like ChatGPT?
Uh, Absolutely, Casper. So here, when you're uploading data, you are well aware of what you're uploading, what content you are giving to ChatGPT or any other model out there, right? So you yourself are intentionally doing that. Uh, and probably there will be more consent-based data ingestions that will come in future, where as a user of the system, I need to give my consent saying it's okay to use this data or content for training a model, retraining a model, or I don't want it to be used, right? So those consent-based systems will emerge in probably near future as we speak. But again, without consent or without my knowledge, without signing up certain legal agreements or terms and conditions, uh, probably it's not worthwhile sharing your any AI model unless
Correct.
it is your enterprise specific or very task specific, where you know where the data is being used or how it is going to be used.
Correct. So it means that we need to make a distinction between artificial intelligence, the technology that's now available to us, and ChatGPT, which is a specific application of it based on generic data, because you could create something like that on specific data as well.
Right.
And if you would feed an AI engine a set of proper data, so data from your company or your organization, so you know the data is correct, so you feed it documents or whatever, are you then 100% certain that if you ask a question, you get the right answer? Or is that not the case?
Uh, so firstly, I would say when you're uploading your company data or any personal or sensitive data, be cautious of where you're uploading it and how it will be used. Uh, because today the AI models out there are still not secure enough to safeguard your data. ChatGPT still has loopholes where someone user A uploads a document with some prompt engineering, user B can download the same document, even though it is a user-based content, very specific to a user. It could be a private or information or a sensitive information. Still, another user
That
is
is,
able to
that is
download that file.
even because
Uh,
you can actually get if you have a paid version of ChatGPT, you can get a contract that sort of guarantees it's not uploading your, or it's uploading your data, but it's not keeping the data. You're saying that is not like 100% bulletproof?
yeah, I mean, this happened with GPT-4 Plus, which is a paid account. Uh, so I really doubt if the systems are still secure. I think with all these emerging LLMs and AI technology, generative AI technology that we are seeing, the security also has to catch up. The cyber security of LLMs has to also catch up. Uh,
Okay, so
I mean, it's still evolving right now.
that's a valid concern. Okay, but apart from that, that uploading has some risk. So if I would feed my content into a secure AI model and I ask it a question, will it always answer correctly, or is that something for the future?
So the kind of as I said, it's a probability based system, right? It's not a deterministic system. It's a stochastic system. So even a space after your last word, even a exclamation instead of a question mark, even a period can alter your response. So there's no guarantee that given a question asked in certain way versus the same question rephrased and asked in a same question in a rephrased manner posed to the system may not give the same answer, right?
Yeah.
So and there's no 100% guarantee that you'll get the right answer because there's a we all see that ChatGPT hallucinates. Again, coming from the probability theory, but it can make up things. It can make up references as well that we have seen already.
Correct. And that's what we
There
call
are
hallucination of the AI.
hallucination. Yeah.
Okay.
There are ways to control hallucinations. There are techniques to control it, but then it's not 100% fail proof.
Okay. So I think that is really interesting, and it opens up like a whole category of other things that you could consider or think about, because it's sort of, yeah, it's an interesting new world that's out there. So, um, so we touched a bit on those ethical concerns that are around AI. So, what happens to your data? Where does data come from? What are the sources of your data? Do you have any specifics on that? So, you already gave us a fair warning. So, be careful where you upload your information. So, do you have certain do's or don't rules that you apply yourself?
See, any sensitive and private information, we generally don't go out in public and use public systems. That's primarily number one. The second thing is PII data. I think today in today's world in LLMs, it's kind of handled. Uh, Models are not taking PII data, personally identifiable information, and even though you ask a specific question about a specific person or a specific entity, which is a private entity, it doesn't give out information as well. It says as an AI, I'm not allowed to talk about it, right? So
Correct.
that kind of handling is already there in place today. Probably it was not there 1 year back. Uh, but then well, what you're asking and what information you're putting out in public systems is something it is to be very cautious about. I mean, that's the recurring thing I'm keep talking about now. But be very wary of what you're putting out there.
And another thing that I was wondering, so I know it is, of course, also like a new way of searching information, like we used Google in the past. And from Google, you know that they build a profile of you over time. And with that profile, they use that combined with the question you ask to give you an answer. But that creates like the dangerous bubble you're in, because if you're asking questions always in the same direction, you will get answers more and more in that direction. And you sort of create your own bubble of information. Does the same thing happen with AI? Does AI also build a profile, and does it take into account what you asked before in generating those answers?
So there's something called context, Casper. Conversational history and context are two things that are kind of being used right now in ChatGPT and probably in any other conversational system as well, to basically keep the conversation going. It's a feature, I would say, uh, where again, as humans, right? Say I meet you today and speak to you on a certain topic today. Next time we meet after say a week, we still go back and talk about those points we spoke last time.
Correct.
So context and conversational histories are kind of trying to do same thing with to keep the conversations flowing. Uh, so that's what AI is trying to do today.
Okay. And does it mean, so you, with those warnings, that, now let me rephrase. So how do you look at AI? Is it a technology that will take over things and make people redundant, or is it a technology that is supportive of people, or is it a bit of both? How do you look at it in going forward?
See, I mean, I would look at it as uh, look at a world of or envision a world where you only have AI creating content. And don't we get bored looking at the same content coming again and again? So probably if you look at LinkedIn today, there are so many posts in similar format uh, where it's all coming from ChatGPT. You can easily make out today. Probably 1 year down the line, we will be so bored of AI generated content that we again look for human generated content. The creativity will probably miss after a while, where we look for new formats. So that way, what I would see is look at AI as a tool. Human intelligence has to be there. AI assisted human intelligence is where I see the world going to be. Uh, So the creativity of humans is still needed, without which it is going to be the same content on which these AI models will be trained on, right? So, how much content would we produce from, say, April 2023 is the last trained model of ChatGPT. From then to, say, November 2023, 7 to 8 months, how much content would we have generated across the world? And is that sufficient to train the next generation AI model? And if just that generic synthetic content is being used to train AI models. What is AI going to be different from today versus say next 2 3 years down the line? It's not going to be hugely different, right? It's probably going to be remain the same.
So you think
Uh,
that what we will see coming next is just improvement what we have. It's not like an extra revolution on top of that, doing like crazy things we can't even imagine.
right. So it took so many years to come to this point, right? For an LLM to see human-like talking LLM or speaking LLM. It took so many years to come here. From here to probably it will be incremental to some extent for next couple of years, and then nobody knows when the next breakthrough will be.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I think that we have a lot of questions coming in. I saw them popping up in the chat. So Molly, you probably have been watching them more closely. So can we take a couple of questions right now?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we've had quite a few questions coming in. Maybe, Casper, this is an interesting one to start with and a little bit relevant to Easy Generator, and I think a lot of people that are joining us today. So if you don't mind, we start with this one. But Robert asks, my wife works in UX, and her and half of her team were replaced by AI. With AI having the ability to create learning content, we foresee companies eliminating or vastly reducing their L&D departments and rely on AI for learning content creation? That's the question.
That's a great question. So maybe I can pick it up because it's more L&D like.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think how I look at AI, partly yes. Because I think that we now do a lot of manual work, and especially if you look at generic courses, I think that that can be created already through tools like ChatGPT. The thing is that there is no didactic, so we need to train them on didactics and models like that. So, that is something that you can foresee happening for the future. The thing is, it's still generic information. So we were already talking with Sravanthi about having a specific database of your own company. If you use that to generate content, it can actually sort of replace the role of a subject matter expert, creating like a draft course for either a subject matter expert or an instructor designer. So I do think that the content creation will be different, and that it will be faster and quicker and maybe even better by the support of AI. But there's also another thing that we will cover on later on in the events, is that if you just imagine that all knowledge is always available at your fingertips, either generic information through generic tools like ChatGPT, or specific company information by tools that will pop up in your workplace and give you an answer if you have a question, that changes learning by itself. A lot of the learning we do in corporates is still knowledge transfer. So there will be less need for that because that knowledge is available always. So we need to go to more skills-based training. It's about how you apply those things, what you can do with it. So I think that is the biggest revolution probably for learning, that we need a completely different kind of training and different kind of content. And we know we have to go there. We were already doing that. That AI will actually give that a huge push towards the future, and yeah, we just need to go there faster.
Yeah. Perfect. Then maybe another question from Stephanie. Where is the line between algorithms and AI? What is the difference between the two?
That's definitely a question for Sravanthi.
Yeah.
uh, See, algorithms is again a step-by-step flow that we typically do, right? So we say these are the steps you need to follow, a computer needs to follow. Uh, Whereas AI is also an algorithm. So but it is kind of algorithm coming from data, uh, right? So how do you learn from data is an algorithm. What needs to be learned from the data is kind of a black box today.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Sounds good. Again, too, I'll mention we have a few questions that I've marked here, but if you do have questions that come up, feel free to still put them in the chat. If we have time, we will work to get around to them. Another question, this is from Suzanne. Is it really okay to feed machines without checking the sources first? It is a question of ethics. So I know that we mentioned, yeah, that ChatGPT was fed, a lot of books to start. But yeah, can you do that without checking the sources, and what's kind of what do people do around that?
I think that's also for you, Sravanthi.
See, there are plenty of books where the authors are have copyrighted their content, right? The books or whatever. It could be books, it could be art. Uh, uh, but then today, once I buy a book, I'm kind of paying for the IP as well, paying for the copyright as well. So to some extent, I have rights on that content. Uh, I
Yeah.
mean, that's how I see it. I perceive it. Probably not to an extent where I can completely monetize that content that I bought for a nominal price of that, uh, whoever created that, right? But then once I buy it, probably it's I have some ownership on that.
But that's
That's how
interesting.
I will.
Because that means that you go to sort of like a Spotify model. So in Spotify, if your album or song is played, you get a few cents for that. So basically, if I engines would be able to track where the source is, and if they actually use your content, you should get like a small fee, and with that, you pay
Absolutely.
copyright. Oh, that's an interesting one. I haven't thought about that yet. That's nice.
Yeah. Okay. Then another question from Sunil. He's mentioned an AI model cannot evolve. So yeah, you mentioned earlier, Sravanthi, that yeah, you don't imagine any breakthroughs, but can an AI model evolve itself, and potentially there's a breakthrough that we can't foresee?
Sorry, so
I
something
can't
happens with
hear
your
you.
audio.
Yeah.
There are possibilities because it's able to create programs, it's able to create content. There is a possibility that it can what do you say learn from its own creation, right? And probably evolve from that. Uh, and when it happens, we would probably wouldn't even know that. We wouldn't even be aware of that. That's kind of threat with probably anything, right? So any new technology that came in probably had many appreciators, many adopters. At the same time, there were many people who were cautioning about that technology. It could be technology, a concept, any part of science, right? So that the two sides will always be there. Uh, we cannot rule out the possibility of AI evolving itself.
Yeah. Makes
But
sense.
I think that today's threat is more about misinformation, the deep fakes, the kind of information that can be spread out using these technologies, where a person can be impersonated. I can probably create voice of Donald Trump or Rishi Sunak. I can create a video of those people, famous personalities, and create false information, spread more, false information, which can have, I mean, what is a very negative impact on the world, on the society. So that is one bigger threat that I would see with whatever current technology that we have, rather than AI taking over humans and all. So
Correct.
the threat of misinformation is pretty huge today.
Yeah, and that's something, by the way, we will cover tomorrow in the first session. Tomorrow we have Stefan, who's the CTO of a company called Synthesia, and they do text to video. So basically, you just upload a text, and then you have a real live looking avatar speaking your text in any language that you want. So that sort of raises the question. We'll look at that technology, but also sort of trying to go into the question, okay, what is real, what is not real, what can you trust, and what is fake information, and what is real information. So I indeed think that that is one of the biggest challenges of AI, that you don't know. But I also heard somebody say, well, what's new? Because social media is no different, because people without a name are putting things there without you being able to check, and it's just happening as well. So you already have those bots and everything, either live bots or human bots. So that's or a computer bot. So that is really interesting.
Hmm.
So and because I see also a question coming around that Susanna thinks that you should not forget that AI is created by man, so that it is in the end it's the man who is accountable for that. Do you think that AI in the future would be able to sort of start building itself, programming itself? It's so smart that it can actually develop itself further, so it can go somewhere without the control of man. Is that even possible, or is that just science fiction?
It can be possible. Assume there are two bots talking to each other and giving instructions, right? Because we are talking about AI assistants, we are talking about virtual assistants, and pretty much automating many things. We don't know whether there's a human behind the uh, content coming out or action coming out versus AI doing that action. So I think there's a possibility with so many virtual assistants talking to each other and probably not in a controlled way. I think control and close watch and close continuous monitoring of what is coming out and how it is being actually used is pretty much needed. Is what I would say. Even though you automate many of those things, but continuous monitoring is something that is pretty necessary.
Okay. Any other questions popping up, Molly, in the chat that we haven't covered yet?
Yeah, there are a few around ethics, and I think maybe we'll save those questions for our session tomorrow, which is really focused on the ethical side of AI, specifically in the learning field. But we can also kind of answer those general questions. So maybe hold on to those ones for tomorrow, and we'll take note of them. And maybe we have time for one more question. This one is coming from Janny, but where does machine learning stop and actual AI start? What is the separation of the two?
Machine learning is also part of AI, I would say. Machine learning is a subset of AI. There are no boundaries as such. So if I look at AI as a what do you say concept, the statistics, probability, mathematics, computer science, machine learning, probability theory, the decision science, neural networks, deep learning, LLMs, all are part of AI. So AI is a big superset of what we call as artificial intelligence, and these are some small subsets of the ways we try to achieve that artificial intelligence.
I see
Okay.
one more question that really interested me, and
Yeah.
it's like generative AI. So, is an AI answer representative of the human diversity? Because, of course, if you put all the information all together and you sort of take the average, you never get diversity. You get like sort of generic answer. Is it smarter than that? Can it be more diverse than that? Will it take that into account?
Uh, if I look at the world representation of where the content is coming from predominantly, right? There are certain parts of the world where the internet is already penetrated heavily, where there's a lot of content being created on the internet from a specific geography. And even within specific geography, probably a certain specific kind of uh, regional or attributes of a personas creating that content, right? So that way, I would not say that it represents the entire diversity of what we have today. Probably it's still biased.
And
Uh,
that bias is just because the Western companies were earlier by putting up information on the web, so there's more. It's just a quantity thing.
right. It's just the quantity thing, and if you look at the quantity that was created or that's out there, it doesn't represent the entire population of the world. Probably some parts are left out. Probably the developing countries do not have so much content. Uh, Certain languages do not have so much content. Certain sectors do not have so much content,
Correct.
right? So that way, it's not a representation of diversity, I would say. There is still a dominance of certain attributes.
Okay, clear. I think that's a great way to end it. Or is there another burning question, Molly? Or
No, I think that's a great way to end it. And yeah, we have a question from Sylvie coming up about how to get buy-in for AI and L&D. But I think that's a great question for the session that we have coming up next with Nick Shackleton Jones. Yeah, we can cover that in the next session. But for now, yeah, thank you so much, Sravanthi and Casper. This was
Yes, really,
really
really thank
great, and I think a nice way to kind of set the theme for the day and for tomorrow, just to get a good understanding of AI as we kind of leap into the next session. So yeah, thank you very much.
you. Indeed, thank you, Sravanthi. It was really, really interesting.